The phone call came at 3 a.m. My grandmother was gone. As I hung up, I glanced at the family portrait on my nightstand, the same one where my son Tyler stood outside the frame, arms crossed, refusing to join. Just like his mother, my father had sneered, always on the outside. Little did he know how prophetic those words would be. I grew up as Eleanor Williams, the disappointment daughter who never quite measured up to my father's expectations. For 30 years, I endured his cutting remarks, his public humiliations, his constant reminders that I was the family failure. But Grandma Martha, she was different. She saw me, the real me. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect from the Williams family, a performance of grief rather than the real thing. Designer black dresses, practiced solemnity, and my father, Richard Williams, prominent Boston attorney, orchestrating every detail to perfection. Until the will reading changed everything. No one expected what happened when that envelope was opened. No one saw the justice coming, least of all my father, who'd spent decades cultivating his mother's favor. But Grandma Martha had seen it all, recorded it all, and in death, she finally spoke the truth that would shatter our family's carefully constructed façade. The Williams family was Boston aristocracy, old money, old connections, old grudges. My father, Richard, built his law practice on the foundation of my grandfather's judicial connections, crafting an image of the perfect American success story. My mother, Catherine, played her part as the elegant hostess, though her eyes grew emptier with each passing year. My brother James followed the prescribed path, Phillips Exeter, Harvard Law, marriage to the daughter of a state senator. And then there was me, Eleanor Williams, the one who preferred science to socializing, who questioned rather than accepted, who got pregnant at 19 with a boy from the wrong side of Dorchester. "You've destroyed everything," my father had hissed when I told them about the baby. "Either terminate or be terminated from this family." I chose my son. I named him Tyler and moved into a tiny apartment near Boston University where I finished my degree at night while working as a lab assistant during the day. Tyler never knew his father. He wasn't interested in being one. But we built a life together, just the two of us. Grandma Martha was my only ally. She'd slip me envelopes of cash when my father wasn't looking, call me regularly, and occasionally visit bearing gifts for Tyler. "You're the brave one," she'd whisper, "the only one who ever stood up to Richard." When Tyler was 7, my father reached out unexpectedly. Perhaps it was my brother's perfect wife producing 3 perfect daughters, but no sons to carry the Williams name. Perhaps it was my mother's quiet intervention. Whatever the reason, we received an invitation to Christmas dinner. "We need to maintain appearances," my father said when I arrived, cocktail in hand. "The family should be together for holidays, but don't mistake this for acceptance." That night set the pattern for the next 15 years. We were invited to major family functions, but positioned as the family charity case. My father introduced Tyler as Eleanor's boy, rather than his grandson. At Thanksgiving dinner, when Tyler was 12, my father publicly quizzed him about his grades, sports achievements, and future plans, then loudly compared his answers to my brother's daughter's accomplishments. "Some bloodlines just run thinner than others," he concluded, raising his wine glass as my son stared at his plate, cheeks burning. The family photo incident happened when Tyler was 16. It was my parents' 40th anniversary, a lavish affair at the Boston Harbor Hotel. The photographer arranged us on the grand staircase, and as we assembled, my father put his hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Perhaps you should wait aside," he said, voice dripping with false concern. "This is for direct family members, only." Tyler stepped away without a word, and I started to follow. "Eleanor, don't be dramatic," my father snapped. "You're still my daughter, regardless of your choices. Stay in the photo." I stood frozen, caught between my son and my father as the photographer counted down. The betrayal in Tyler's eyes when I didn't move haunts me still. That photograph hung in my parents' foyer for years, my shame displayed for every visitor to see. What none of them knew was that Grandma Martha had been watching and recording. For years, she'd been keeping meticulous notes of every slight, every cruelty. Insurance, she called it, though I didn't understand what she meant until it was too late. The grand gesture came last year. My father announced at Thanksgiving dinner that he was revising his will. Family legacy matters, he declared, glass raised. I've decided to establish the Williams Family Foundation. Eleanor, you'll be pleased to know I'm including provisions for Tyler's education, provided he attends law school and changes his surname to Williams. My son, now 22, and halfway through his computer science degree at MIT, simply smiled and said, "That's generous, grandfather, but I won't be needing it." My father's face darkened. Pride is a luxury you can't afford, boy. None of us knew then that Grandma Martha had made her own plans. None of us suspected the secret she'd been harboring for decades, a secret that would rewrite our family history forever. Grandma Martha's funeral was held at Trinity Church in Copley Square, where generations of Williams had married, baptized their children, and said their final goodbyes. The May morning dawned bright and clear, inappropriately beautiful for such a somber day. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, nothing designer, nothing that would draw my father's criticism. Tyler wore his only suit, slightly too small across his shoulders now. He'd grown into a handsome young man with my blonde hair and a quiet confidence I envied. "We don't have to go," he said as we drove into the city. "She was the only one who was ever kind to us," I replied. "We owe her this much." The church was packed with Boston's elite, judges, politicians, philanthropists. My father stood at the entrance, accepting condolences like a monarch granting audiences. My mother hovered at his side, dry-eyed and immaculate. My brother James corralled his 3 daughters, all in matching black dresses, their faces appropriately solemn. When we approached, my father's smile tightened. "Eleanor, Tyler, thank you for coming." His words were correct but cold for the benefit of those watching. He guided us to seats in the 3rd row. Family, but not immediate family. The service was everything Grandma Martha would have hated. Formal, impersonal, filled with platitudes about a pillar of Boston society rather than the warm, funny woman who used to smuggle cookies to me under the dinner table. My father delivered a polished eulogy that made me wonder if he'd ever actually known his mother at all. Afterward, the funeral director approached our family. "Mrs. Williams left specific instructions," he said, handing my father an envelope. "The reading of the will is to take place immediately following the service, here in the church. Only family members are to attend." My father frowned. "That's highly irregular. The reading should be at my office, with our family attorney present." The funeral director remained firm. "These were her explicit wishes, sir." She arranged everything before her passing. We gathered in a small chapel off the main sanctuary. My parents, James and his wife Victoria, their 3 daughters, Tyler and me. My father positioned himself at the head of the room, clearly expecting to conduct the proceedings despite the funeral director's presence. "Before we begin," the funeral director said, "Mrs. Williams left a letter to be read first." He handed an envelope to me. "To me?" I asked, surprised. My father's face flushed. "Clearly a mistake. I'm the executor." "The instructions were very clear, sir," the funeral director insisted. "Miss Eleanor Williams is to read this letter aloud before the will is disclosed." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and began to read. "My dear family, if you're hearing this, then I finally escaped Richard's control." Yes, Richard. I said control. "For 60 years, I've watched you manipulate, bully, and scheme your way to power, using your own family as pawns. I've documented every transgression, every cruel word, especially those directed at my beloved Eleanor and her son." The room fell silent. My father half rose from his chair. "This is preposterous. Eleanor, stop reading this nonsense immediately." The funeral director stepped forward. "Sir, these are Mrs. Williams' final wishes. Please allow your daughter to continue." My voice grew stronger as I read on. What none of you know is that I've been planning this moment for years. Richard, you thought you had me fooled with your performance as the devoted son. You thought I didn't notice how you embezzled from my accounts, how you manipulated my investments to your advantage, how you convinced me to sign over properties that should have remained in trust. My mother gasped. James looked stricken. My father's face had gone from red to white. "Eleanor, enough," he shouted, standing fully now. "This is slander." Tyler moved to stand beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "Let her finish," he said quietly, with a firmness that silenced the room. I continued reading. "But your greatest betrayal, Richard, wasn't financial. It was what you did to Eleanor. What you forced her to do when she came to you for help all those years ago. The real reason she left home." My heart stopped. She couldn't possibly know. No one knew, except my father and me. "What is she talking about, Eleanor?" my mother asked, her voice thin with confusion. My father lunged for the letter, but Tyler stepped between us. 6 feet tall now, he towered over my father, who recoiled. "The secret dies with me," the letter continued in my trembling voice. "But know this, I've made provisions in my will that will right some of these wrongs. Eleanor has suffered enough at your hands. Now, justice will be served." The letter ended there. The room erupted in chaos, my father shouting that the letter was forged, my mother demanding explanations, James looking bewildered. Through it all, the funeral director remained calm, waiting for the storm to pass. When there was finally quiet, he removed a thick document from his briefcase. And now, the last will and testament of Martha Eleanor Williams. My father smoothed his tie, composing himself. This alleged will clearly shows my mother was not of sound mind. We'll be contesting it immediately. The funeral director smiled thinly. "Mrs. Williams anticipated that response, Mr. Williams. This will has been validated by 3 independent psychiatric evaluations and 2 separate legal teams. I assure you, it is ironclad." He opened the document and began to read, as my father's face grew paler with each word. "I, Martha Eleanor Williams, being of sound mind, hereby bequeath my estate as follows." The funeral director's voice echoed in the silent chapel as we all sat frozen, waiting for the hammer to fall. My father had positioned himself back at the head of the room, attempting to project confidence, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the chair. "To my son, Richard Williams, I leave the sum of $1. A collective gasp filled the room. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. This token request reflects the true nature of our relationship and acknowledges that he has already taken far more than his share through years of financial manipulation and exploitation of my trust. My father shot to his feet. "This is outrageous! I demand—" "Sir," the funeral director interrupted firmly, "interrupting will not change the contents. Please allow me to finish." He continued reading through smaller bequests: jewelry to my cousins, art pieces to friends, charitable donations. Then he paused, adjusting his glasses before continuing. "To my granddaughter-in-law Victoria and my great-granddaughters, I leave trust funds of $1 million each, accessible when they have demonstrated financial independence from Richard Williams for a period of no less than 1 year." Victoria's eyes widened as she looked at my brother James, who sat pale and silent. "To my grandson, James Williams, I leave my personal journals documenting his father's legal indiscretions, with the suggestion that he carefully consider his own ethical path forward." James swallowed hard, his legal mind clearly calculating the implications. The funeral director turned the page. "And now, to the heart of my intentions. To my granddaughter Eleanor Williams, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my primary residence on Beacon Hill, my summer home in Martha's Vineyard, all remaining financial assets, and my controlling interest in Williams family investments. The room spun around me. The estate was worth tens of millions. Furthermore, the funeral director continued, I appoint Eleanor Williams as the sole executor of the Williams Family Trust, with full discretionary power over all assets previously managed by Richard Williams. My father's face contorted with rage. This is theft. She manipulated Mother in her final years. Additionally, the funeral director raised his voice over my father's protests, I leave to my great-grandson Tyler the contents of the sealed envelope marked The Truth, with my blessing to use it as he sees fit. The funeral director produced a large manila envelope and handed it to Tyler, who accepted it with shaking hands. My father lunged toward Tyler. Give me that envelope, boy. Tyler stepped back, clutching the envelope to his chest. It's addressed to me, grandfather. You have no right. You're not even a real Williams. The words hung in the air like poison. My mother's face crumpled in confusion. Richard, what are you saying? I stood then, 25 years of submission falling away like a discarded cloak. Tell them, father. Tell them what you made me do. Eleanor, don't you dare, he sputtered. Tyler opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. His eyes widened as he scanned the first page. These are DNA test results, he said quietly. The room fell silent. According to this, Tyler continued, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, my biological father is James Williams. My brother made a choking sound. Victoria gasped, staring at her husband in horror. That's a lie, James shouted. I closed my eyes, the memories flooding back. We were 17, James. That party at the Cape House. You were drunk, I was naive. It was once, and I never told anyone, except Father, when I realized I was pregnant. I turned to my father. You said it would destroy the family, destroy James's future. You made me promise to say it was some boy from Dorchester. You sent me away, told everyone I was rebellious, promiscuous. You made me the family shame to protect your precious son and heir. You told me she seduced some lowlife, my mother cried, turning on my father. You said we had to distance ourselves to teach her responsibility. Tyler stood tall, documents in hand. There's more. Grandma Martha kept records, detailed records of grandfather's embezzlement from family accounts, evidence of legal malpractice, tax fraud. He looked at my father with cold eyes. She had private investigators document everything for years. My father lunged for the documents, but Tyler sidestepped him easily. You're nothing, my father spat. A mistake. You don't deserve the Williams name. The words hung in the air for a moment before Tyler smiled, a calm, confident smile that transformed his face. You're right about one thing, grandfather, he said quietly. I don't want the Williams name. I never have. I'm proud to be Tyler Bennett, son of Eleanor Bennett. We built something real while you were building lies. He turned to me. Mom, I think we're done here. I nodded, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in decades. Yes, we are. As we walked toward the door, I turned back one last time. My father stood frozen, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. My brother sat with his head in his hands. My mother stared at me with new eyes, seeing me, perhaps, for the first time. The lawyer has my contact information, I said calmly. I'll be reviewing all the family accounts starting tomorrow. And then we walked out into the May sunshine, leaving behind the weight of a lifetime of secrets. The aftermath was as explosive as you might expect. The Boston Globe ran a tastefully vague story about irregularities in the Williams estate settlement. The legal community buzzed with rumors. 3 of my father's biggest clients quietly took their business elsewhere within a week. I changed my surname back to Bennett the day after the funeral. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried for decades. Tyler and I moved into Grandma Martha's Beacon Hill townhouse, its 5 stories of history and elegance initially overwhelming. The first night, we discovered a letter taped to the underside of her jewelry box drawer, dated just 3 months earlier. "My dearest Eleanor," it read in her shaky handwriting, "I've known the truth since the beginning. Richard thought he could hide it from me, but mothers know their children. I watched him sacrifice you to protect James, and my silence makes me complicit. I was too weak to stand against him then, but I've spent the last 20 years preparing this reckoning. Forgive me for not acting sooner. All my love, Grandma." Attached was a key to a safe deposit box containing decades of evidence, financial records, recorded conversations, photographs. Grandma Martha had been more strategic and patient than any of us had realized. The family splintered in predictable ways. My father refused all contact, hiring an aggressive legal team to contest the will. His challenge failed spectacularly when Grandma's evidence of his financial misconduct was submitted to the court. He and my mother separated 3 months after the funeral. She called me, sobbing, asking if she could visit. We met at a neutral restaurant, 2 strangers trying to build something from the ashes. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I suspected things weren't right, but I never knew how bad it was." "You chose not to know," I corrected her gently. "There's a difference." James surprised me. He appeared at my door one rainy Tuesday, soaked and looking older than his 45 years. "I don't remember that night," he said when I let him in. "I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just don't remember." "We were teenagers," I said, "and you were very drunk." He looked at the photos on the mantel, lingering on one of Tyler at his MIT graduation. "He looks like me around the eyes." "He has your aptitude for mathematics, too," I offered, "but his character is his own." James nodded slowly. "Victoria's filed for divorce. The girls won't speak to me. Dad's drinking heavily and blaming everyone but himself." He looked at me directly. "I'd like to meet him. Properly, if he's willing." Tyler was cautious, but agreed to coffee. That first meeting was awkward, stilted, filled with long silences and careful questions. But it was a beginning. They've met monthly since then, slowly building something that resembles a friendship, if not quite a father-son relationship. The grand gesture of my father's proposed family foundation became something real under my guidance. I established the Bennett Family Foundation for Educational Equity, providing scholarships to single parents pursuing higher education. The irony of using William's family money to support people my father would have considered beneath him brings me a particular satisfaction. 6 months after the funeral, I received a call from my father's doctor. He'd had a minor stroke and was refusing treatment. Against my better judgment, I went to see him in the small Beacon Street apartment he'd moved into after selling the family home. He looked diminished, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, Boston Common spread out below. The imperial presence that had dominated my life was gone, replaced by a bitter old man clutching at the remnants of his dignity. "Come to gloat?" he asked when I entered. "No," I said simply, "just to see if you needed anything." He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. "Need? From you? The ultimate betrayal." "The only betrayal was yours," I said quietly. "You sacrificed your own daughter to protect your son and your reputation." He looked away. "I did what was necessary for the family." "No, Father. You did what was necessary for your image of the family. There's a difference." I stayed only 15 minutes. As I was leaving, he called out, "The boy, Tyler, is he well?" It was the closest thing to concern for his grandson he'd ever expressed. "He's brilliant," I said. "Kind, successful, everything you should be proud of, but never earned the right to claim." I didn't visit again. He died 3 months later, alone in that apartment. The funeral was small, nothing like the grand affair of Grandma Martha's. I attended out of respect for the office of father, if not the man himself. Tyler chose not to come. The unexpected twist came during the clearing of my father's apartment. In his desk, we found a sealed envelope addressed to Tyler, dated the day before his death. Inside was a handwritten letter and a vintage pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. To my grandson, it read, "A man should have his grandfather's watch. I was not worthy of being your grandfather. Perhaps you will be a better man than I was. Richard Williams." Tyler held the watch for a long time, turning it over in his hands. "Too little, too late," he said finally, but he kept the watch. I found my own letter tucked inside my father's legal papers. Just 3 lines. "You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. Perhaps that's why I tried so hard to break you. I failed." It wasn't an apology. Richard Williams would never apologize. But it was an acknowledgement, and somehow that was enough. Life settled into new patterns. I took over management of the family investments, discovering a talent for finance I never knew I possessed. Tyler finished his PhD in artificial intelligence and launched a startup with classmates from MIT. We hosted holidays in the Beacon Hill house, creating new traditions with the people we chose as family. My mother found her voice in Widow's Weeds, joining the boards of several women's organizations and speaking openly about financial abuse in marriages. James moved to Chicago for a fresh start, maintaining his careful, evolving relationship with Tyler through regular video calls. As for me, I started dating again at 51, a professor of literature I met at a foundation event. The first time he came to dinner, Tyler pulled me aside afterward. "He looks at you like you're the most interesting person in the world," he said. "That's how someone should look at you." Grandma Martha would have approved. It's been 3 years since that funeral that changed everything. The Beacon Hill house feels like home now, filled with books, music, and people who genuinely care for each other. Tyler's company went public last year, and he insisted on establishing a scholarship fund for children of single parents at Boston University, where I struggled to finish my degree all those years ago. Sometimes I stand in front of the family portrait we've created, not a formal posed thing, but a candid shot from last Thanksgiving. Everyone laughing, slightly blurred, perfectly imperfect. Tyler at the center, not the edges. My mother with genuine joy in her eyes. James and his oldest daughter, who's cautiously rebuilt a relationship with him. My literature professor, now my husband, his arm around my waist. Grandma Martha's final gift wasn't just the money or the houses. It was the chance to redefine family on our own terms, to break the cycle of conditional love and manipulation that had poisoned the Williams name for generations. I often wonder what would have happened if I'd found the courage to stand up to my father sooner, to walk away from the table when he humiliated my son, to demand the respect I deserved. But then I remember what Grandma Martha wrote in that last letter. "Timing is everything, my dear. Some reckonings can only come when all the players are in position." She was right, as always. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that family isn't defined by blood or names or appearances. It's defined by who shows up, who stays, who sees you for who you really are. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. And sometimes justice arrives in unexpected ways, delivered by unexpected hands. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever swallowed your truth to keep the peace, if you've ever wondered if you deserve better, you do. Stand your ground, tell your truth, build your own family portrait, with yourself at the center, not relegated to the edges. If this story resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Every family has its secrets, but healing begins when we bring them into the light.